Welcome to Sound and Fury. I am Eric Wilfred Watson.
And I am Bacon.
Right.
I was right. I'm Bacon. Ha.
Today we're going to talk about the most important thing we have ever talked about in the entire history of Sound and Fury.
Yes.
Star Wars.
Yes.
Again.
Ah. Yes.
But this time, there's a twist. We are going to discuss why we, nerds, believe the original trilogy, the OT, are the best things that Star Wars has done to date.
This will be a short video. Sum up 2 words. Irvin Kershner. Out.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss more riveting commentary and videos like this in the future. No, seriously. They've made a lot of Star Wars recently. They're cranking them out on Disney Plus. We got the Boba Fett coming. We got the Mandalorian season 3 coming. We got the Ahsoka Tano coming. We got the Obi-Wan Kenobi. And other things I'm probably forgetting. There is the Rian Johnson trilogy that may or may not be an actual thing. There is the High Republic stuff. There's all kinds of Star Wars. There's books. Now, Dark Horse Comics is going to be making Star Wars comic books again. But really, it all comes back to the original trilogy.
Yes.
It's all true.
What is it about the original trilogy? Why did you become a Star Wars fan?
So, well, the short answer is because of the toys. When I first saw Empire Strikes Back in the theater back in 1980, I was 4, and my cousins were showing me their TIE fighter, and I really thought it was awesome. And they said, well, we're going to go see a movie that has these in there. And I said, a movie about toys? That's awesome. And I went there and saw like just coolness happening. So, I mean, for me, it was Empire Strikes Back was how I got introduced to the Star Wars universe. I was young. I didn't know what was going on. You know, spent the next 3 years debating with my friends about, you know, was Darth Vader really Luke's father? Somewhere I had seen Star Wars. I don't know how they re-released it, maybe, or something. And then in '84, saw Jedi in the theater because I just had to know, right? But it's a compelling story. It's the hero's journey. It is this. It's the starting point for all of these characters that you know that there's a backstory eventually between Luke and Leia and Darth Vader. You know, they call him Anakin towards the end of the trilogy. And it really, it starts everything, and it doesn't overly try to explain. There's no, well, let's explain why Darth Vader lost his hand. Let's talk about why Darth Vader doesn't like sand. Let's talk about midichlorians.
I don't think that was in the original trilogy.
No, but I'm talking about how, yeah, wasn't in the original trilogy. They go back. I'm explaining kind of why the prequel trilogy didn't really work, right? Because they go in and instead of being like this fantasy, like how does the Force work? Well, I don't know. It's a fantastic thing. This is more fantasy than sci-fi. They go back and, well, let's talk about midichlorians. Let's talk about the Force at a microscopic level. Qui-Gon, can you pull down that chart? R2, throw up the PowerPoint. Like, they don't do any of that. It's just the Force kind of works, and there's some quirky old Jedi that, you know, went crazy somewhere along the way. You know, Obi-Wan's an old hermit, and Yoda's just a crazy.
The wizard's just a crazy old man.
Exactly. So it's you know, and it had, of course, this used future, and it was the first science fiction film that wasn't all about how the future was supposed to be. It was about how things just actually were in some galaxy far away. And it I don't know, just hooked me in. It was just a very compelling. I could identify with, you know, with Luke Skywalker, and yeah, so.
I wasn't really the world's biggest Star Wars fan as a kid. I mean, I liked the movies, but they were just movies to me. It really wasn't until I got a little bit older that I really fell in love with them. And I hate to say this, but it was when they were re-released into the theaters in the 90s. Because I'd seen them on VHS a couple times here and there, and I'm like, yeah, it was a good movie, whatever. And there's no Enterprise, so I guess I'll settle for Star Destroyers. But when
which are a tactically superior shape, by the way. But anyway, go ahead.
But I remember one of the best movie trailers of all time was when they showed the TV on the movie theater screen. It says, for an entire generation, people have only experienced Star Wars like this, and they showed a little shitty TV with a
For an entire generation, people have experienced Star Wars the only way it's been possible, on the TV screen.
Yeah.
Clip from Star Wars on it, and then the X-Wing flies out of the TV, and all of a sudden it's on the big screen.
But if you've only seen it this way, you haven't seen it at all.
Now. And I'm like, okay, I think that they just sold a $7.50 movie ticket, which was, I think, how much movies, or maybe it was $5.50, like 1995 or something. I don't remember.
1997.
Okay.
Not getting too specific, but yes.
I thought that it was great that they're going to be back in the theaters. And, I went and rewatched them on VHS because I had them. And these are good movies. I should have been paying more attention to these. And then I kind of became a fan of the original Star Wars trilogy at that point. I liked them before, but they're just movies I like. There were 3 movies on a gigantic list of movies that I loved, but they weren't any more wonderful than like the Indiana Jones movies or Back to the Future. They're just good movies I liked. Right. Didn't really become more obsessive about them until, late teens, early 20s.
Totally get that. Yeah, for some reason it was, for me, and my friends at the time, we'd, every stick would become a lightsaber, and every, battle in the backyard was, stormtroopers and deflecting blaster bolts, and I don't know, it was everything was just Star Wars for years and years and years. That was just what we did. Of course, I had as many action figures as I could.
Did you see anything? No, sir. I didn't see you playing with your dolls again. Good.
It also might have to do with I'm just slightly younger than you. So what those experiences with like the toys and what, for me, that was Ghostbusters. That was the thing I was absolutely obsessed with as the kid. I wanted to be Peter Venkman. I pretended to shoot ghosts in my backyard. I made, empty Christmas wrapping paper rolls as proton packs. That's what I tortured my mother with when I was a kid. But of course, then I liked Star Trek, and Star Trek flowed into other science fiction, which naturally brought me to Star Wars. But again, I've talked about this with other videos we've had where characters, and by the way, characters.
Yes.
The new trilogy and the classic trilogy do have some good characters, and there's some excellent things in those movies, but it's not the lightning in a bottle circumstance with Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Alec Guinness. It's just perfectly cast. It's perfectly done. Carrie Fisher is absolutely the right person for the role. If they would have designed those robots, if they would have done the C-3PO costume 10 years later, it wouldn't have looked, it was like the perfect time to do that.
Right.
And the aesthetic of it was just perfect. It was an absolutely perfect accidental history where everything came together in the right place at the right time for that to happen. And you can't recreate that magic in a lab.
Right. So let's break down some of what makes it perfect when you can contrast it to some of the other.
I'm in agony.
And it was a conversation between Lawrence Kasdan and George Lucas about what made Star Wars great, kind of like what we're talking about now. And George Lucas said, well, it's all the lights and the special effects and the lasers.
Heat beam, which we called a laser.
And all that, and Lawrence Kasdan said, no, it's the characters, it's the people feeling pathos for these people that they can identify with. It's the heroes, it's the it's the danger that they're in that people can cling to. And so you move on to later on, George Lucas goes off by himself and does this prequel trilogy, and most people can't really, without using the actual titles of the characters, try to describe Qui-Gon Jinn. Well, he's a Jedi. Like, okay, well, tell us more about him. Like,
he has a special set of skills.
He has a special set of skills. Yes, you don't kidnap his daughter. But but then it's like, okay, we'll describe Han Solo without saying smuggler or something. It's like, well, yeah, he's dashing, he's daring, he's brash, he's bold, he's kind of a jerk. He's kind of, there's all these character words you could use to describe Han Solo. It's like, okay, we'll describe Watto. Is that the blue guy that flies? He's greedy, so there's but the main characters are just so flat because George Lucas went back to, well, we can do this with the technology and we can film this all digitally and we can add all this kind of stuff, and then we're going to do lots of shots of people walking and sitting and then walking and then sitting.
George Lucas is best when he's kept in check, like the Indiana Jones movies. When Steven Spielberg was a check against George Lucas,
right,
they were good movies, but George Lucas had a lot more story control over the fourth abomination of an Indiana Jones movie, where Steven Spielberg,
soon, right?
Spielberg was just like, you want to have aliens? Sure, why not? It's not like Steven Spielberg hasn't done alien movies, but he knew that it wasn't right for Indiana Jones, but he just gave George Lucas whatever he wanted.
I thought that was a fan film.
I think you're right. Nobody would ever make that as a real movie, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the one. That's the one with they put Han Solo in a refrigerator and launched him through a nuclear blast, right? I mean, they wouldn't put that in a movie and expect.
Yeah, there's a fan theory that Indiana Jones is what Han Solo was dreaming while he was in carbonite.
That's actually kind of neat. Yeah, I like that idea.
But in the classic trilogy, Phantom Menace, it's a fun movie to look at, but there's not as much of a high stakes thing. So they, trade negotiations. Okay, now we're stranded on a planet and need to buy parts, so we're gonna swindle some guy out of, a gambling thing. We're gonna watch a race that lasts an hour, and then we're gonna leave the planet. It just doesn't really do a lot.
Right.
The best part of it's like we need to have Nintendo 64 video games, so let's have a racing sequence so we can make a racing video game.
Right.
And George Lucas wants to have things look the way he wants them to look, so they do. And I'm not saying that I hate the classic or the prequel trilogy. They just don't hold up as well.
They don't because again, they don't really follow that same journey, and there's not really any clear, who is it really about? Because the majority of the first one is barely really involves Anakin, so it's not his story. And then the second and third one kind of follows Obi-Wan more, so but it's not really his story either. So yeah, it's hard to...
Episode 3 is the best part of the prequel trilogy because it has real stakes, real emotion, and they are starting to morph into the characters you recognize. Anakin, even though it's kind of silly the reason he turns to the dark side, he actually has a story arc. He actually wants to accomplish a goal. It's a silly goal. His wife's going to die in childbirth, even though later on Leia remembers his mother or her mother. There's
right.
There's no way she's going to remember the mother, but anyway, they create themselves little plot holes, little inconsistencies. It's very hard to do a prequel if you're not extremely meticulous with details. Right. Like my favorite is your father wanted you to have this lightsaber when you were old enough. He never expressed any such desire. He just wanted to not be on fire at that particular moment.
I hate you. By the way, please give my son my lightsaber.
Yeah, and didn't know he had a son.
Right
at that point.
Well, but that's the lie, though, right? That's the why did you?
Obi-Wan's a lying, dirty bastard.
He is a lying, dirty bastard
from a certain point of view.
From any point of view that matters. Yeah.
How about the sequel trilogy then? Why didn't that work as well as the classic trilogy?
So
because it looks very Star Warsy. Aesthetically, it's perfect. It looks like a Star Wars movie. It feels like a Star Wars movie. It smells like a Star Wars movie. But it's missing that element.
Well, they added stuff into, and it's one of the things I don't like about Solo is also one of the things I don't like about what was the Decline of Skywalker? What was the second? The Lost Jedi.
The Last Jedi.
The Lost Jedi. They were lost. They didn't know where they were. They're just driving around the galaxy. They're like, as Mel Brooks would say, they're like the Jews in Egypt. They were just wandering around for 40 years. So
we ain't found shit.
Exactly. But they.
What about you guys? We ain't found shit.
But they spent the whole movie just wandering.
Language.
It might as well have been Lord of the Rings. So, but anyway, in the Lost Jedi, it's all about hyperfuel, and in Solo, it's all about hyperfuel, and they went hard sci-fi. That's not Star Wars. Star Wars is not hard sci-fi. You know, you hear Han in Empire Strikes Back, you know, shout out a few parts like, "Oh, that's not working." You know, is it the alluvial dampers? Give me the hydro spanners. You know, there's some of the stuff they talk about these technological things because they're trying to fix this machine that's broken. That doesn't necessarily make it hard sci-fi to me.
It's like walking past a garage and hearing mechanics talk about a car rather than learning a technical manual about a car.
Right. And yeah, and trying to explain how this works and actually watching them dump hyperfuel into the hyperfuel combustion chamber to make the thing reach, you know, fast enough to do the Kessel run and stuff. And, you know, the giant hyperspace monster that lives in the middle of this black hole, like, what did it eat?
Giving her all she's got, Captain.
Right. Yeah, it was a Star Trek moment.
Hey, Scotty, can you get this machine to work? I'm giving her all she's got, Captain.
Matter of fact, wasn't that the exact same setup for the first Star Trek movie?
What's that?
The first, not the first, like the original back, but like the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie was they were about to get sucked into a black hole and they had to do some special shit to try to get out, and they ended up like warping the core out and blowing it up or something to propel themselves
when you
forward.
said first Star Trek movie, I'm thinking of the 1979 Robert Wise Star Trek movie, and I'm like, I don't remember that.
Information. Yeah, no, not that one.
But
the first,
but yeah,
J.J.
you're
Abrams.
right. They eject the warp core, and there's a whole different conversation to be had about what happened with those movies. But you're right; it turned into hard science fiction. I like hard science fiction, but that's not what Star Wars is supposed to be. It's supposed to be action, adventure, swashbuckling, fun adventure with high stakes, characters you care about. You want them to succeed. You want the heroes to win, the bad guys to lose. And in the sequel trilogy, it kind of undoes what happened in Return of the Jedi. Oh, they didn't really defeat the Empire. They didn't really establish a new Jedi Order. They didn't really save the day and win. It's like everything after Return of the Jedi actually went to shit, and it kind of sucked after that for the next generation or so. Then we have to fight another war, and it gets even more horrible. And in the end, you know, the Rian Johnson movie, you know, they all get wiped out, and it's just not fun to watch as much because they're losing, but not in a fun way like Empire Strikes Back.
Right. And they spend 3 movies pissing on the original heroes. Luke's a failure, Han's a failure, Leia's a failure.
Yeah, Yoda puts a good spin on failing is a good thing.
Yeah, well, but but what was the point? And I get that that's how life works, but that's not how movies work. That's not how our entertainment, when we want our spirits to rise. When we're in a funk, when we're in, you know, one of the greatest movies, actually, I don't want to put context around saying greatest, but the highest grossing movie, when you index it to inflation, is Gone with the Wind, which came about during the Depression. People wanted to go see movies. Also, Wizard of Oz, very high grossing during the Depression. People wanted to go see movies. People want their spirits lifted. So it's not about what real life is. If we wanted to see real life, we'd just turn on the news.
I hate the news.
We want our heroes to be heroes, and then to just grind it all to shit. And let's face it, you can't call it the Skywalker saga when Skywalker's not in the saga. He's not in it. He's in
there are no Skywalkers left at the end of Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
Except for somebody who decides to take their namesake to honor them, I guess, which is kind of nice, I suppose.
Right.
Rey has an actual decent story arc through the trilogy, but it's not the Skywalker trilogy.
Right.
It's not part of the Skywalker
Kenobi
saga.
is in the original trilogy longer than Luke Skywalker is in the sequel trilogy. He's alive for a few scenes in one of the movies and dead in the other 2, and has more lines of dialogue than Luke does.
I don't want to completely poo-poo the sequel trilogy. There's some good stuff in there. I think Finn is a fun character. I do like the story arc of Adam Driver, his character turning from, you know, torn to asshole to sort of redemptive at the end. He has to sacrifice his life to save the universe from Palpatine 2.0. And And I guess there's a certain aspect of that. I mean, they're decent movies. They're just nowhere near what the classic trilogy was. Classic trilogy, to use the cliche, was lightning in a bottle. The stars aligned. It was perfect.
Right.
And
Right.
they've tried to recreate that and just have been missing.
You've managed to kill just about everyone else, but like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target.
And it wasn't about, so Poe was a great character, Finn was a great character, Rey could have been a great character, and I'll explain why she wasn't and why she could have been. It had nothing to do with Daisy Ridley. Daisy Ridley was great. And if the whole idea was the Jedi Order was still around, and you've got this new threat, and Luke Skywalker needs some fresh blood or whatever to explain, okay, we need to seek this new person for some reason, because there's another prophecy and somebody else came about, and here comes Rey. She could basically be the same character, but without taking away all the accomplishments of the original people and saying, hey, you know what? The game's been stepped up. Luke is he's up here, but we need somebody up here. So we're going to go seek Rey because, that's the next prophecy, or that's the, whatever, right? She could be more powerful. I don't care. It's not about that. It's about just saying that everybody
didn't have to knock Luke Skywalker down to raise Rey up.
Exactly. It pissed on everybody from our generation, and you just don't do that. You just don't do that. So, and they literally say, forget the past, kill it if you have to. It's like, well, you. No.
Language.
Because if you kill the past, if you get rid of all the original Star Wars, what have you got? You've got 3 movies where they're searching for somebody that nobody gives a fuck about. Okay. So why bother? So, yeah.
So with that, yeah, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody that loves the new movies, loves the prequel trilogy. I like them probably more than you do, although I agree with your criticism, but I just have a soft spot in my heart for anything Star Wars. Even if I can list 27 reasons why it's bad, I still like it anyway. But I do think that it's just, if you pick 20 random Star Wars fans from the next celebration and ask them if they think the classic trilogy is the best part of Star Wars, I can't imagine anybody would disagree with that.
Right. I can't imagine either. And I used to,
and it's
really
not just
bash
because
on
they
the
came
prequels.
first.
And it's not just because they came first. No, it's because they, if Lucas had come out with The Phantom Menace had been his first film, it would have been his only film. Because he was into like weird experimental stuff like THX 1138. But the thing about and I rewatched the prequels and tried to just allow it to just be, and just tried to watch it without
let the
any
art wash
pretense.
over you.
Let the art wash over me, yeah, to quote William Hurt. And there was only really a couple scenes that that just jarred me out of the movie. And I think they were both in Attack of the Clones, and the one was the flying R2, and then the second one was, you have this tremendous Jedi battle. Never have there been so many Jedi on film at once, so many lightsabers ablaze. This
perfect time for a dad joke.
Attack those Federation starships, quickly!
But it just, like, Lucas doesn't really get the humor, and so that sucked. He really needed somebody else to direct that scene, or just to take out those jokes entirely, or rework them somehow. Not really sure. So that is, both of those things just jarred me out of the movie. But after rewatching the prequels, I don't hate them. I don't. I can appreciate them for what they are, and just watch them and enjoy them, and look at it through the lens of, let me just pay attention to what's happening instead of what my expectations are of what I thought these were going to be when I first saw them in the theater.
Can you do that with the sequel trilogy?
Nope, not at all.
Okay, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Sound and Fury. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to buy both of my books.